Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Kr Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class, which is from Canto 2. And Canto 2 is entitled A Cosmic Manifestation. And Chapter 2, which is entitled The Lord in the Heart. We will do text 16 today. Without further ado, we'll start the class right now. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Vajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Gopi Vallabha Girivadadari Jaya Gopi Vallabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Vajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Stotra Satsishimari Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Stotra Satsishimari Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai अनंत कोटि वैष्णविन की जय नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंज राधा कुंज गिरि गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय नवद्वीप धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि को all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Gauranga Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Dita Swami Niti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Bhahupada Siddharthana Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Narayana Namaskritya Narun Tevam Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Virirayat Nashta Prayeshva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhavati Uttamastoki Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. So before speaking, I would like to ask permission from the devotees who are senior to me and the rest of the devotees to speak something as service to all of you. Hare Krishna. Today, before we read the text, I'd like to also remind devotees or announce to them if they don't know that today is auspicious for two reasons. It's the disappearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and disappearance of Gadadhar Pandit of the Panchatattva. So depending on how things go and the time goes, hopefully I'll be used by my Guru Maharaj Srila Prabhupada to speak something not only about this text, but also about these two distinguished guests. One is a distinguished devotee, sorry. And it will be very nice to hear about them because they're all connected with Guru Leela. All right, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, and Text 16. Manasvabudya malaya niyamya Kshetragya etam ninayetyam atmanam atmanya avarudya diro labdo pashantir virameta krityat manasvabudya malaya niyamya Kshetragya etam ninayetyam Atmanamatmanya varudhya diro labdo pashanti virameta kritya manasvabudhyat malaya niyamya Kshetragya itam ninayetamatmani Atmanamatmanya varudhya diro labdo pashanti virameta kritya. Hare Krishna. Anyone who would like to chant, please do so now.
Mana swabudhya malaya niyamya Kshetragna etam ninayetam atmani Atmanam atmanya varudhya dhiro Labdho pashanti virameta kritya.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Manasvabhutya malaya niyamya Kshetra jnanetam ninayetam atmani Atmanam atmanya varudhya dhiro Labdo pashantir virameta krityat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else like to try? Okay. We'll do word for word. Mana, the mind. Swabudhya, by his own intelligence. Amalaya, unalloyed. Niyamya, by regulating. Kshetragye, unto the living entity. Etam, all of them. Ninayet, merge. Tam, that. Atmani, the self. Atmanam, the self. Atmani, in the super self. Avarudhya, being locked up. Dhira, the fully satisfied. Labda upashanti, One who has attained full bliss, viramita, ceases from Krityat, all other activities. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The functions of the mind are thinking, feeling, and willing. When the mind is materialistic or absorbed in material contact, it acts for material advancement of knowledge, destructively ending in discovery of nuclear weapons. But when the mind acts on the spiritual urge, it acts wonderfully for going back home, back to Godhead, for life in complete bliss and eternity. Therefore, the mind has to be manipulated by good and unalloyed intelligence. Perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is in all circumstances a servant of the circumstances. Every living being is serving the dictates of desire, anger, lust, illusion, insanity, and enviousness, all materially affected. But even while executing such dictations of different temperaments, he is perpetually unhappy. When one actually feels this and turns his intelligence to inquiring about it from the right sources, he gets information of the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Instead of serving materially for the above mentioned different humors of the body, the living entity's intelligence then becomes freed from the unhappy illusion of materialistic temperament, and thus, by unalloyed intelligence, the mind is brought into the service of the Lord. The Lord and his service are identical. The Lord and his service are identical, being on the absolute plane. Therefore, the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer of himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his desire. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. In his pure, unalloyed state, the living being attains a stage of full bliss, laptopashanti, and seizes all material hankerings. Oma Gnati Vidandasya Gyana Gyana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatyadi Shatarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Siva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. The English translation again. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Hare Krishna. So, this is a very important and interesting description of what the living entity is supposed to do in order to get satisfaction. So, how to use the mind and intelligence to one's advantage, spiritual advantage. The yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity. Sometimes we hear about the mind and say the intelligence, and by what we know from non-devotee life, we say, well, is the mind and as well as the intelligence? Yes. The mind is accepting and rejecting different things, and also thinking, feeling, and willing. Basically, whatever that the mind takes or comes in contact with, the mind thinks about it. The mind is going to either accept that kind of feeling that comes with it and decides to go for it, whatever that thing that's come, using the senses. The senses are the ones that get whatever it is that the mind is thinking actually performed. So that's the willing part. Willing part involves using the senses. So thinking, feeling, and willing. Now, Shukadeva Goswami is talking about the mind being merged by the intelligence into the living entity, where the living entity in this case is the soul, and merging the living entity into the super self. That means merging the soul into the super soul. Actually, the super soul is Krishna himself. So basically, we're talking about subtle things. So the merger here is not your direct merger that we look at from a material standpoint. Well, just the simplest way to look at it is just turning attention to the super soul, because the super soul is present in the heart of every living entity. So everybody has super soul in the heart area. And our real identity, the soul, is also in the heart area. Now, in material life, the soul is looking away from the super soul. And by that we mean not turning the attention to Krishna consciousness and doing material things, where Srila Prabhupada is describing in the purport. We'll get to that. When the soul turns the attention to Krishna consciousness, then it means the attention is now being turned to the super soul. And that we can look at as a form of merger. Now, the intelligence, the mind, what operates here in the material world, now is being turned towards Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada beautifully explains how initially the mind of a person is attached to material things, and then later on, when they're not satisfied, they begin to inquire, ask questions. So, Srila Prabhupada explains that when that happens, when the mind is now turned the attention to the super soul, then the mind becomes satisfied. That is the supreme stage of satisfaction. Because super souls, the attention of the mind turned to the super soul means now the person is willing to give their life to Krishna and perform devotional service in love with Krishna. Krishna says, even when you offer a leaf, fruit, flower, just things that are so easy to get, water, but if you offer it with love, I become satisfied. And I will take it and I will accept it. Krishna says that. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yo Me Bhakti. He said, I will accept it. This is in Bhagavad Gita. So when we begin to serve and serve from our hearts, then we will become satisfied. We will become happy. And then another thing starts. Loving sentiment towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead also begins. And that is a success of life, even while we are in this material body. Things around us may still be going on every day, but in our own, the core of our hearts, we feel very, very, very happy. And the Lord will also protect. And so many things will happen in our lives to indicate that the Lord is with us and the Lord is really, really particularly turning attention to us. That's easy for him to do. We could do that sleeping. What do we need, actually, after all? We're such tiny beings. So the mind is for thinking, feeling, and willing, as we talked about earlier. But when the mind is in a materialistic mode, as the majority of people in the world are now, it asks for material advancement of knowledge. What do we call that? Research. And of course, the word has a funny meaning behind it. The ordinary meaning is people want to find new things from this material planet that we're on, come up with new combinations. But actually, research also admits, by just the nature of the word, that we don't know much. You want to find this, you want to find this, to find this. Well, if a person that's looking for something new is someone who doesn't know what that new thing is. So there's plenty of ignorance. But the research aim is actually to come up with something new just to make money. And money connects with power. And therefore, sometimes at the international level, actually not sometimes, this is going on all the time. At the international level, one country is vying for power. And the power is not being obtained by fair means. Power is obtained by, I want to be able to I want to be able to put myself in a situation where I can destroy you so that you'll be afraid of me, how much I can destroy. And so this is going on. And that's why Srila Prabhupada says, even the advancement of knowledge destructively ends in discovery of nuclear weapons. Why destructively? Because that's what nuclear weapons would do. They'll destroy. They don't develop anything. They don't give, a couple of them have been thrown in Japan and they know what happened. People were very, 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 very miserable. Those who survived it, they wish they were dead. Some of them were envious of those who died, because death would be like the end of the misery. But this is what people have now in different nations. And some people are struggling, some other nations are struggling to get it. And that, drama, this still goes on. The world is on edge now because of acquisition of nuclear weapons. Some of the leaders are warning, if you do this, I'm putting my option on the table of using my nuclear weapons if the need arises. And then some others do have a few. They're trying to make some noise that I also have nuclear weapons. So I also should have some say. But the thing is, nobody realizes that here's an analogy we can give. In chess, there's something called checkmate. That means the player has got the other player cornered. That if you do this, I'm going to be able to defeat you. If you do this other way too, I'm going to be able to defeat you. You have two ways, but either way, I've just positioned my myself on the board, for lack of a better way to put it, so that either way I win. But that's Krishna. Krishna has put the world powers on checkmate. Hmm? So now they're talking among themselves, but they don't know what to do. Really. So the mind is like that. If you put it towards destructive things, then Krishna will show you who really owns this planet. So that's for the materialists. Now, when the mind acts on the spiritual urge, as Sri Prabhupada puts it, then it acts wonderfully for going back home, for eternal life of knowledge and bliss. So it makes more sense that if the mind in material things is going to be acting destructively, then we should turn the mind to spiritual things because that type of service, that type of activity makes us happy and satisfied. It's just that simple. So the mind, Papa says, has to be manipulated by the good and unalloyed intelligence. And as it is explained, the super soul helps for us to do the right thing in Krishna consciousness through the intelligence. The intelligence is what tells the mind, this is good, this is not good, be careful of this, and so on. Mind is just simply taking things, accepting it, or rejecting it. Accepting it, and it uses the senses to do whatever. The intelligence is the one that warns. Will this be for your good or not? As Rishi Ganapabu was on yesterday, we talked about the 6 items of surrender by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Put it out. First is actually also very much a statement made by Rupa Goswami. So the first 2 is accept things favorable to devotional service and reject things unfavorable to devotional service. That is good use of the mind. Accepting. So basically, it is the intelligence that should tell us how to move. But Rupa Goswami and Bhaktivinoda Thakur have made it easy for us by actually telling us our life should be about devotional service. What is favorable devotional service we should definitely do, and what is unfavorable, don't do it. That's Maya. That's how Srila Prabhupada describes it, that every living being is a servant of the circumstances. And we should be intelligent enough to understand this is what it is. People are alone. They feel lonely. So they go get a dog and they start serving the dog. The dog is like a baby. You have to clean up after the dog. You have to walk the dog. You have to feed the dog. So then that is the circumstance they're in. And therefore, they serve like that. Somebody else may be turning, fortunately, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so they don't feel lonely because they know there is Sadhu Sangha. So whenever it's needed, they will connect with another devotee and talk about things involving bhakti, either from the Shastra or actual activity, or even involve themselves in activity. Like some devotees were on City Island yesterday, that area, down to the main park around the Susquehanna River, and they were chanting the holy name of the Lord. They're doing actual activity. But they also had Sangha because there was a number of them, a few of them. So at the same time that they were giving the holy name to people and talking about the Rath Yatra that's coming up, the house is on the 20th of July, a little over 2 weeks from now, actually 2 weeks and 1 day. This is service, that's the perfect use of a mind and intelligence. Disturbing the circumstances. But some people are served by the dictates of, or they're serving the dictates of what they want, desire. And desire for myself, desire for things for myself, material things for myself. That is the definition of lust. Love just gives. Lust just takes for, lust is selfish for me. how to enjoy my senses. And some living beings are being, the overwhelming majority of living beings are actually serving their lives in this way. Desire, if you don't get it, they get disappointed, they get angry. These are all material things they want for themselves. Mm. And when anger goes to a certain high level, then it comes to insanity. And then they look at other people. They have stuff that I don't have. They become envious of them. Mm. And then there are other people who have certain positions and they want to make sure that nobody ever gets there. So that's also jealousy. So this is all going on in material life. Now, that situation will never make a person who is in it like that ever happy. See, the Prabhupada says that person in that different temperaments being affected like that will always be unhappy. So all of these vices are saboteurs, literally, towards our happiness. Mm? But when we serve the Lord and serve the Lord's devotees, then all of these are turned now into Krishna consciousness. And some of them are removed totally. The desire now becomes a desire to serve Krishna's senses. Mm-hmm. You know, lust and illusion and insanity and enviousness, they all take a back seat. Mm-hmm. Desire is now purified. We want to be the servant of a servant of a servant of the Lord. And that's how we become happy and satisfied. Mm-hmm. So that is the time when the person turns his intelligence into inquiring about life, what it really should be, especially when the person is unhappy from all those other things, the vices that we talked about, based on lust. I remember when I was in school, graduate school, I had to do a lot of experiments in chemistry, and I was supposed to compile all my data and look at the trends and begin to write about it. And that was supposed to be my thesis for finishing the program. And we started writing. After 4 years of experimentation, we started writing. And I had my tables made, and there was a professor who was the supervisor for me. It's called the advisor also. And so I, hand wrote at that time. We didn't have computers, and word processors were just coming up. We didn't have computers like we do now. There were computers, but like you couldn't buy them. They weren't even selling them. They were just renting them. And one computer could, the parts of it could fill two small rooms, not like a laptop. It's come a long way from computers being able to occupy two rooms, and they were not fast either. Hmm? So yeah, we were using just, regular sheet of paper and writing and so on by hand. So I wrote my discussion and drew my tables, and I went to him. And he read through the trend that I had written, the discussion, and he rejected it immediately. And I was kind of, sad, but I didn't show it in my face. He's advisor and he's rejected it. He just piled and stapled, and he just read about the first couple of pages and decided that he wasn't going to go on reading. So I asked him why, and he said that you are talking about your data and experiment and discussion as if it is the all in all. You can't be sure about that. The language you've used is definite language. This is what is happening based on my data. This is what's happening. This is what is happening. You can't write like that. Then I asked him, well, how do you write then? He says, you should write, this may be happening. It appears that this is the trend here. This may be, because of that, we may conclude that this is probably the way things are going. In other words, I shouldn't write like it was definite. I should write that it was probable. And that's why he rejected. It wasn't because of what was being written, but the language, the way in which things were put, as if it was definite, and and he didn't want that. They said that's not how you write. So then I inquired further. All right, so if I have to write, this may be happening. Apparently, this is going on, so on. Why we write it that way? Then he explained that as long as people are doing research, okay, I'm just paraphrasing how he answered it. As long as people are doing research, later on, someone else may do experiments with even better machines, because people are trying to always improve things, better equipment, and they may write an article refuting what you wrote, hmm, what you wrote. They may say, okay, now we see it's this way, and they will quote you and say, well, you wrote that, especially if you write an article and publish it. In this publication, this is what it said, but we think based on this, now we can see that it is a little different, and they may just refute all or part of what you've written. That's why you never say it is like that. It is like that, then it means that you've committed yourself. But if you said it may be like that, then it means if somebody says it's not like that, you can say, later on, if you say it's not like that, you can say, well, I never said it was like that. I said it might be at that time based on my data. So you have to be slick like that. And this is how people write articles. You talk about a relative world. So then it got me thinking. So all right, I went back and changed the term, the tense, the grammar, and rewrote it, everything being apparent rather than definite. But then I got to thinking. So if for that kind of work, at the literally, arguably the highest level, this was a PhD program, and I have to write like that, and I've been told you have to write it's apparent, then what is definite then? It's certainly not from this experiment that I did, because I can't even write like that. So that's what got me thinking. So, all right, all of these are supposed to be apparent. And you have to do is probable. Probably it's happening this way. So that's what pushed me to say, okay, well, I have to find something what is definite about this world. The sun is definite, the rains are definite. So why is it that we do research, we have to write that things are probable? And it didn't take me long, after maybe a couple of years or so, that by the Lord's mercy, we came into Krishna consciousness. And for Krishna consciousness, everything is definite and it doesn't get changed. So even at the highest levels of research, in a country as advanced materially like the United States, things have to be written in a probable way. The Lord is absolute. So what is important is spiritual life, bottom line, period. Even at the highest levels of research, people are just writing things that maybe. It may be. So you don't, this is going on, but you shouldn't even miss that. You shouldn't miss them. Don't think that they're not better than us at all. Real knowledge is what's in Srimad Bhagavatam. I've been there, so I've already seen it. So the intelligence has to be used in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mind and intelligence both. People sometimes feel that the material things are also important, and this is one of the tricks of Maya. We got to get the material things done. Then, as we have time, we will do the spiritual. That is also one of the tricks of Maya. Material things are only necessary for maintaining the body. Material things are not important. They're only necessary because we have these bodies. We're not even these bodies. What's important is food for the soul. So every time you get to a situation where you have a spiritual thing to do and some material thing is also lurking, never let Maya win the argument of tempting us to do the material things first. Do the spiritual. Do the spiritual because that is what gives us the opportunity ultimately to leave the material world, which is this jail that we're in, and go back to Godhead. Hmm? So if we just put our material responsibilities as more important than the spiritual, then we become, as the term is in ISKCON, fringe devotees. Devotees on the outskirts of devotional service. They haven't plunged in head first. A person who is serious plunges in head first into devotional service. That means they are very eager to do. We should never see our material responsibilities as more important than bhakti. Bhakti is what gets us out of this jail. No material responsibilities can get us out of this jail. They can't. Srila Prabhupada also describes the Lord and the service being identical. Now, the Lord and his service, the worship service of the Lord, are identical. Why? Because the Lord is on the absolute plane. So everything about the Lord is absolute. So everything about him is him. The Lord's name is him. And that's why when we chant the name of the Lord, Hare Krishna mantra, as service to the Lord, as requesting for service to the Lord, we call Hare Krishna, we call Krishna's name, that is Krishna. We can't be like that, but he's on the absolute plane. Therefore, service to him is also him. When you call his name, it's him. That's why the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, because the service that we do with the mind and intelligence, devotion service, that is also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, they are, in one sense, one and the same. Or another way of looking at it is it's merged into the Lord. So when we do that, when we serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but it becomes seen by the Lord at the transcendental level. At the transcendental level, it means the Lord actually sees this person because it's become a part. The activity is actually Krishna himself. Why? How can activity be Krishna himself? We can't understand it without mind the way it is. But the Lord is absolute. So activities involving the Lord, that's also the Lord. As a simple example is given as chanting the holy name of the Lord. That's using our mouths to get the name of the Lord out. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Clearly, we're calling the Lord's name, but that is also the Lord himself. That's the explanation for the absolute nature of the Lord. Now, we are not at the level of purity, unless there are a few devotees among us who are pure devotees. That's possible. I'm not one of them. And so when we serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, since we don't do things purely and we don't even have perfect senses, we serve by giving it to the spiritual master, offering our service to the spiritual master, who then purifies it. And so this is how we are connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Service to Krishna is of the same category as Krishna himself. So everything is used to serve him. It comes on, everything is under one or more of his energies. So devotional service purifies our mind. And then purifying the mind, the intelligence is purified, and then there's merger into the intelligence, the mind of the Supreme, because of his absolute nature. So basically, even if it's a little bit hard to conceptualize, just keep serving from your heart. Keep serving from your heart. Serve so much, and that's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj has told us, don't try to see the Lord. Serve so well that he's going to want to see you. So this is the explanation for it. When we serve purely, that service is part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, based on the fact that he is absolute. So everything about him, service to him, is also him. And I know towards the end, there's the word lapdo pashanti. We'll say a little bit about that because the text coming after this one explains what lapdo pashanti is. But there's still a part of it that we could very much use in our devotional service. So it literally means one who has regained true sight. One who has regained true sight. Regained means they didn't have true sight before, and now they have regained it. They've gotten it, which means a person who was not pure, having now become pure or looking at the right direction, the spiritual direction. And those are sadhana siddhas, people who are doing devotional service by instruction, but who have done it so perfectly that now they are part, literally, of Krishna's pastimes because they are very, very, very happy and they merged into bhakti. Literally, they are performing bhakti, but they are also merged into the happiness that comes with bhakti. So then the question is, can we also perfect our devotional practices and become at that level? Why not? We have to perfect our sadhana activities and serve so much and serve with such high quality that the Lord will want to see us. That's what it takes. So we should never turn down any service that we know we can do. We should actually make time. Not make time for material things, make time for spiritual activities. And be very determined that no matter what kind of situation comes as a challenge to us, we will never see that as an excuse because Maya sometimes throws things at us just to find out if we really will go on and do the service, or we'll see that so-called inconvenience as a way to say, well, I don't know, maybe it wasn't meant for me, and miss the opportunity to serve the Lord and serve the Lord's devotees. So that's an important point for us. We have the chance to serve nicely, and we should always take advantage of that service. Not only that, we should prioritize the spiritual over the material at all times. Ki Jai. I want to add a few more things because of the disappearance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and disappearance of Gadadhar Pandit. Maybe spend another 5 minutes talking about that situation. Wonderful day today. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sri Satyananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he appeared in this world in 1838. He was the wealthy family in Nadia district, West Bengal. So by his extraordinary preaching activities, it became clear to many people in the area that he was an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was part of the Guru Leela. He was a prolific writer. He wrote about 100 books. And there's so much detail about bhakti is described by him. Later on in his life, he was actually working as Grihastha. He was a magistrate, district magistrate, high court judge. But he only spent about 4 hours of a day sleeping. He sleep, and then midnight he'll get up. See, Papa used to get up around 1 o'clock. He'll get up at midnight and he'll write till the morning, back to Thakur. So he was a devotee of a Lord that took Vaishnav Diksha from Sri Vipin Bihari Goswami. He was in the line of Sri Janavamata, who was the wife of Lord Nityananda. Balaram, I should say. Same personality. Afterwards, then he got Shiksha. You always checked in with Jagannath Das Babaji. So he had an exalted a government post. He was a judge. He was very, 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 very scholarly. And all of those things never disturbed Bhaktivinoda Thakur's spiritual life. He was very prideless, he was very humble, and he was friendly to everyone. He never spoke a word that would hurt another person's feelings, which means, as all advanced devotees are like, they're very careful about aparat. And aparat, the bottom line, you got to find a mild way to express things. That he was a high court judge, therefore, he will have to pronounce the judgment for every single case. Imagine that. But he always used words that would not hurt the other person's feelings. Not even when he was in court, he was very careful. So he was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful devotee of the Lord, and an eternal associate of Lord Gauranga, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit is one of the Panchatattva, the constant companion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He came about a year or so after Lord Chaitanya appeared. And when they were little, they were in the same school, and they were really, really, really close together, associating. Gadadhar Pandit is actually incarnation of Srimati Radharani. So his father's name was Madhava Mishra, mother's name Ratnavati Devi, Sri Ratnavati Devi. And they were living very close to the house of Jagannath Mishra in Mayapur. So they were close to where Lord Chaitanya was. And they went to school together, as I said, Gadadhar and Gaurahari. They would play together, sometimes at one of the houses, or one of them, or the other person. They studied together in the same school. So Gadadhar was about a year or so younger than Nimai. Nimai, when he was, Lord Chaitanya, when he was younger, was called Nimai. And they could not remain without each other's company even for a moment. They were very, 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 very close. Very, very close. So he associated with many devotees, pure devotees of the Lord, Gadadhar himself. There's some pastimes involving, I don't have much time now to get into that, but maybe another time. Some of his pastimes are actually wonderful, very wonderful. But let's put it this way. Towards the end, he was worshiping Tuta Gopinath, and when Lord Chaitanya left, that leaving affected Gadadhar so much that even though he had a wonderful body, he aged very quickly. Now, of course, he doesn't have a material body, right? But the signs of it, this from missing Lord Chaitanya, he looked like he was just, from looking at him, that he had aged a lot. But not long after that, he couldn't literally even serve Tota Gopinath so well. Tota Gopinath was standing, so the pastime goes. Many, of course, you see the deities are standing up. And Tota Gopinath literally, for Gadadhar to be able to put a garland, he was that weak just because Lord Chaitanya was gone. And so the deity sat down so that it would be easier for Gadadhar to put a garland over. So to the Gopinath deity, the Lord is actually sitting down. This is one of the reasons. So Gadadhar Pandit is Srimati Radharani, and he also left by merging into the deity, according to what's been explained here. Anyway, so this is a few of the pastimes of Gadadhar Pandit and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We are actually at the top of the hour now, but devotees can unmute themselves. And if you want to make some comments, you can do that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please
Hare
accept my
Krishna.
humble obeisances,
That's
august to
fine.
Srila
Oh,
Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so much for such a detailed class. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Glory to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Any other? We are on the top of the hour, but still, if you want to make some short comments or ask a question, feel free to do that. Hare Krishna.
I think there is something in the chat. I don't know. I see something.
Okay. I'll go to the chat too. And that's from Sabanga Sunga Damadaku. Okay. Hare Krishna, people, please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. The situation, oh my Jesus, okay. The situation you mentioned about your thesis is very relatable. We always talk about experiment in a probabilistic way, probable. Yeah, yeah. Not absolute stuff. When this way of language is used in big theories like theory of evolution, it misleads people for ages. And people stay the whole life with this illusion of the particular incorrect theory. Well, welcome to the welcome to life now in science. Yes, it is that way. Unfortunately, people realize that many things are done in research with all kinds of assumptions. And just because people don't know what the reality is when they start with assumptions, then of course you can't go from an assumption to accepting something is actually a fact. You have to say that, well, it may probably be happening that way, or it is probable that this is the way things are going with it. Yeah, so that's what's used. And I could just add one more thing. Many of the things that are produced now in science, and the different items that they come up with, cell phones, everything that we just use, different cars and many things. Those who make them know the theory underlying those whatever that they use for making the product. They know the theory. They also know that the theory is not exactly reliable when it comes to making that item that they sell. In other words, there are some equations and all kinds of things that are there that could be used in a different scientific subject, especially chemistry and physics. But it boils down to the person, the engineer that is applying it, actually looking at the reality of the situation. The equations may be there, the theory may be there, but the theory don't give you exact numbers. If you go by what the exact numbers are from your theoretical calculation, you're not going to be able to produce a reliable product. You literally have to make experiments to find out how things are going to go and build from that, and not directly from the theory. If you can, I just give one example. There is an equation that describes if you make a battery. People know batteries that we use, how much voltage the battery should be, how much chemical you put in, and from that equation, you can work out what voltage you're supposed to get. It's called the Nernst equation. Some German guy came up with it. If you apply that and you use what the quantities are of this materials, chemicals that's going to go into the battery, and you put it in based on that equation, and then you check the voltage of the battery, you're going to get a different voltage from what that theory that theory equation tells you you're going to get. You're not going to get the same thing. So basically, you just have to take the chemical and keep putting it in and put some amounts in there and checking with some device to find out whatever voltage that is 1.5 volts, whatever. But if you use that equation, and that's the basic equation that they taught in school, you teach that in school, but you can't use it to get accurate power of your battery. You can't. So much for theory. It's more stuff, and it's just not absolute. So the world here is not one to take too seriously. Spiritual life, that is absolute. The Lord Himself is absolute. So that's where we need to put our attention to. Hare Krishna. I apologize, but they talk to me these kind of things. I'm actually not doing crazy about research at all. Now I'm not at all. But now we know that it's all temporary, and it's all temporary because the whole world is temporary. And of course, many assumptions have been made. So things that are produced can't even be backed up by so-called theory that's there. Hare Krishna. Any other comments? Okay, so thank you very much. I hope this wasn't too much boring stuff for you, especially the materialistic part of it. We just have to use our mind in service. This boils down to that. Mm. And those of us who've been in science can tell you we are in the right place now doing bhakti. It's the best thing. Nothing else compares to it. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakapatarubhishcha kripa sunibhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Go Pramanande. Hari Hari Bo. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go Shri Prabhupada.